Welcome to the Build Your Coaching Business Around the 9 to 5 podcast. I'm your coach, Pamella Pritchard, and I help you go from employee to business owner. Whether you're creating your first client or learning how to create clients on repeat whilst holding down your day job, I'll help you make your business dreams a reality. Let's begin. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be diving into the story around my digital nomad chapter. And I wanted to share it with you because I get asked about it quite a lot. And I wanted to tell you all about it and some of the lessons I learned, some of the business growth and challenges that I had along the way, how I navigated it. I will also be putting this on the podcast. So hello and thanks for tuning in if you're listening to this on replay on the podcast. I have a pretty international audience because those of you who don't know, I am currently in Australia, having settled here, I left England in November 2021 and have been a digital nomad since then whilst growing my coaching business. And I wanted to share the journey because sometimes I have to laugh at myself. Like, it's a bit of a cliche that I had this dream to travel. I had this dream to, frankly, live in a warmer climate. I love England. I'm very proud to be British. And yeah, I can't cope with the weather. As you can probably see if you're watching this live right now or on replay, I'm olive skinned. I swear it's in my blood to be in a hot climate. And I always struggled with the cold in England. I always had this dream to travel and go to Australia, and I'd never been. I didn't know anybody who lived in Australia, really, like not closely, but I just knew that I wanted to do it. And I'll give you a very brief timeline of events from when my coaching business started, because I also get asked this a lot. I officially started my coaching business in January 2020, pre-pandemic, bear in mind. I didn't get furloughed. I didn't get made redundant. I say, unfortunately, slightly tongue in cheek, the nature of my work, because I worked with human resource professionals, I got busier as a result of the pandemic. My corporate career was busier than it had ever been because of the demand of the corporation I worked for. It's basically management consultancy, it's research and advisory that I used to do. And so, as you can imagine, anybody who worked in HR needed us extra during the pandemic because they were navigating unprecedented events, as we all remember. And so I was extra busy. So I was hectic in my day job. I was certifying and learning how to do life coaching. And I already had clients in my job search services that I was helping people with. So I certified in November 2020 twice, and again in February 2021 with ICF and a spiritual certification. I had my first paying client for life coaching services in November 2020. So that's 11 months after I officially started life coaching in my business. I left corporate in April 2021. I had a 4-month notice period, so I actually resigned at the end of December. I remember going into the new year and I was like, yes, it's happening. I'm handing in my notice. I was so excited. Then I left London in August on my birthday, and spent time with my family in Devon. I left England in November 2021. So this is a year and 11 months after I started my coaching business. I spent 6 months in New Zealand traveling around. And then in April 2022, we traveled to Australia, and then we were a digital nomad for kind of 50-50 in the time we were in New Zealand, because full transparency, we had a base at my partner's parents' house, but we also traveled around the North Island and the South Island. We didn't do as much of the North Island as we would have liked, but lots of the South Island. And we were so blessed because it was the height of the pandemic still. New Zealand was a little bit behind England in that regard, and they were still very much in lockdown, very much in scarcity or fear-based mindset about having like social distancing. We had to do like MIQ, which was awful. If you've done it, let me know. It was just terrible, but it is what it is. But we were really blessed because we could see places like the Fiordlands and Stewart Island and the mountains and the lakes, and it was dead. There were no tourists. There was nobody around. We were so lucky to see nature so beautifully in the South Island. It was just amazing going to waterfalls, and we would be maybe one of like 2 or 3 people there. Oh, some incredible memories. And then we moved to Australia, and we've now been in Australia for 2 years and 2 months. And the reason why I'm doing this today, of all the times I could have done it, is because we have now closed the digital nomad chapter and we are now renting. We have put down a deposit. I'm now in my new office and I'm here for a whole 12 months, which means I've been able to actually unpack my suitcase, which felt very strange, like fully unpack it and put it away. I've lived out of literally just a suitcase, a hand luggage, and my laptop for the last, ever since we left England, which was in November 20. And it's funny, I've never been one to accumulate much stuff. I didn't have much clutter. Living in London, you rent anyways. So I've always been relatively minimal. But I want to talk about some of the things, about the lessons, the experiences. I've got 6 points that I want to share with you. I've already covered quite a lot, actually, but just gives you a bit of context and a bit of the timeline. But I want to talk a little bit about accidental minimalism and how that came about and how that's really relevant to my experience of being in corporate. Because there's a mindset piece here that I didn't even realize was happening until I reflected on it earlier. And then I was like, whoa, this is fascinating. So I'm excited to share that with you. Then I want to talk about the emotional and mental well-being of being a digital nomad. And I'm going to touch upon loneliness, social interaction, living in paradise, but still having human emotions, and grief. I'm also going to talk about safety and comfort and grounding when you don't have a home and a place, like a base that's permanent, because that was also an interesting experience. I'm going to touch on prioritizing health. And I'm also then, of course, because I'm a business coach, I'm going to talk about business, managing time zones with my clients, how I prioritize, how I systemize certain things in my business to make the traveling aspect easier. So let's dive in. Drop me a message if you have any questions, and I can always maybe touch upon it on another episode or something. So let's dive in. Number 1, the accidental minimalism. Like I say, living in London and renting, I was always pretty good at not accumulating too much stuff. I became an accidental minimalist. When I moved to London, and I was like 24, 25 when I moved to London, I had my first like big paycheck and experience of earning lots of money. Lots more money than what I was ever used to, having been a student. And I worked in international top 10 law firms, and entering a world where, and bearing in mind I worked in recruitment and HR at the time, I entered a world where my salary exponentially increased from what I was used to from living in like a little town in Devon. And I entered a world where, like, think of Suits, the TV show. Like, it was a thing to be seen, to be spending money, to be wearing designer clothes, to be looking good, to be having the handbags, to be in touch with the material things that mattered according to those circles. And I fully fell for it. You know, I loved the corporate city life. I had a fancy office looking over the Thames. I worked in the kind of office where we had sleeping pods, where it was, you know, the fancier the office, the better the firm. It was a statement. It was like a statement about like your worth, your value. And working in recruitment and HR, it was my job to filter the type of people that we would have working for us as an organization. So I would filter people by their education, by whether they came from red brick universities, by whether they were well spoken. This kind of shit I now actually like feel fucking disgust about as I reflect on that. And I know that the firms I worked for back then have also changed their tune on what it actually means to be inclusive and diverse in their workplaces. But back then, this was was where, like, this is what I was taught. This is how we were taught to filter people and how to determine if someone was good enough to work for the company. As you can see, because I know you're a life coach if you're listening to this, no wonder I now teach people how to decondition from the toxic freaking mentality of what it is to work in corporate, because you are taught to measure your value by your grades, by the prestige of the university you work in, by the prestige of the companies that you worked for. And now what I value, what my life is about, couldn't be any more opposite. And when I went into these companies and I fell into this trap of like caring about how I looked, about caring about having, the latest fashion from the kind of shops that they bought things at. I got to a stage, and this was before I even found life coaching, but about 2 years before I found life coaching, where, like I said before, like I started questioning, like, what the fuck is this really what my life is about now? Are we really still having another conversation about the latest fucking clothes or what the new person is wearing? And it just felt so superficial. And I started questioning, like, why are we looking at these CVs, judging people by where they come from, but by the prestige of the university or the prestige of the company they worked for? Like, why don't we actually bring them in and have a real conversation with them as a real human and see what they're about, see what they value, see what they care about, see what flavor they can bring to the companies? And what I found was, when I left working for law firms and then went into recruitment and worked into agency recruitment, I still worked for law firms and management consultancy and property firms. I was already starting to question this, and I was far more pro being on the side of the individual. And it is why I became such a great negotiator on behalf of my candidates to help them get the best deal, because I learned very quickly, having come from in-house, that companies will exploit, not intentionally, but they will exploit. If you give, they will take. And God, do we give? We give because we want to get the promotion. We give because we want to get the validation. We give because we want to be seen as trying hard and doing our best to get ahead in our careers. But as we know, that just feeds our insecurities. It feeds this lack of boundaries. It feeds this need for external validation. And so when I did work for recruitment, and I found that I was suddenly in a position of influence where I could represent a candidate and go to a company knowing full well that they have a budget that's 10K above what they said it was, I was the first person to say, well, actually, they need more money. If you want to hire them, you're going to have to pay them 5K extra. I became bold. And I think that's why I find selling and being bold, like on this kind of forum, on social media, selling my services and advocating for my clients to believe in their value, to believe in their worth, to believe in the price that they want to be charging. It comes from my experience in recruitment, where I became the advocate for the people who weren't sure how to speak up for themselves. And this accidental minimalism that I fell into, which really served me as I started traveling as a digital nomad, was a byproduct of that, because I stopped caring so much about what I had, and I started caring about who I'm being. And so when I realized that I was actually going to be traveling and that I was going to have to massively minimize how much I literally owned, I stopped shopping. Like the year leading up to me leaving England, I didn't, I stopped making shopping a pastime. I used to just go to the mall. I used to go to Westfield, go to Oxford Street, or go to Carnaby Street. And it would just be what I did. I'd do it late night Thursdays, shopping on the weekends. If I had time to chill, or, you're working, not working, and you're just like looking up Zara online, I just stopped doing that. It just wasn't a thing for me anymore. When I stopped shopping and I stopped spending, I was saving money that supported me to go traveling. And that was so exciting, because I was suddenly seeing myself work towards something that was bigger than me for my future. So even though I wasn't yet spending the money, because I hadn't bought flights yet and I didn't know where I was going yet, I knew that I was investing in myself through saving. that was a really interesting mindset shift. And I really love having that sovereignty and that self-responsibility and that sense of purpose. And then I also obviously wasn't shopping as much, so I wasn't accumulating as much. And it made me realize, like, honestly, guys, once you're dressed in the morning, it's done. You don't need to think about it. Like, there is something in wearing the same shit every day. Like, it minimizes the decision fatigue. It means that you pay more attention to like what you got to look forward to, and you stop caring so much, and you notice it when other people care a lot about how they look, what they're wearing, how they're dressing, and you get resourceful. Like, you become okay, and you have to find sufficiency in what you have. And that was interesting, especially when it came to like occasions, like going to a wedding, going to events, going on nights out, when you're like, well, you want to feel good. It's like, right, I get to feel good because I choose to feel good. I get to feel good because that's who I am, not because of what I wore or because it was new or because, oh, I just hate my wardrobe today. That thought doesn't serve you. And it set me up to be able to travel with very few things and never feel like I ran out of things. Now, don't get me wrong, there were totally occasions over the last 2.5 years where I had moments where I was like, oh my God, I'm sick of wearing the same stuff. But it was like a one in, one out philosophy. If I went shopping, and I did give myself permission to shop on occasion, but it really was like, I'm going to buy something that really makes me feel good, and I'm going to get rid of something that doesn't. And so I fell into this accidental minimalism. What I've written here is anti-corporate materialism. So my experience of accidental minimalism is a result of my anti-corporate materialism, because it just frees up so much headspace. And it really allowed me to tune into actually, what do I care about, when I took away the headspace of what am I going to wear? How much stuff do I have? What am I going to do with myself this weekend? Like, it freed up so much mental and physical space. It was fascinating. And yeah, it's been really fun. Like, even unpacking in my new space, we have so much wardrobe space that's empty, and I like it. It feels clean, feels really, really clean, feels really, really feels minimalist, and there is something very refreshing about that. So anyway, enough about that. Let's move on. Emotional and mental well-being. So, okay, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about being in paradise and still feeling lonely. I think this for me was one of like the really big things, because I experienced, when I first moved to London, I remember having moments where, life is hectic. You're living the big corporate life, having lots of fun. You're busy. There's always stuff to do, which is amazing. And I remember, like, a year into into my London experience, I had a night, like a Friday night, when I had no plans, no date, did just nowhere to go, nowhere to be. And I remember walking home through Borough Market, which is a vibe. I lived in London Bridge, which was an incredible location to live in my first year of London. And I got home and I was like, oh my God, who am I when I'm not doing something? And I had this real experience of loneliness. And it really made me realize that when I am alone, who am I? What am I? Am I okay with being just me? And what was interesting is that I had the same experience when I was traveling. And bear in mind, right, I'm in a loving relationship with a man who loves me, who I have such an incredible connection with. And even then, in New Zealand and in Australia, I had moments where I was alone, and I would just be like, wow, who am I? What is life? Like, what is this? And when you really have like nowhere to go, nowhere to be. And when this happened in my digital nomad journey, it would happen like in moments, often when I was in beautiful places, and you're sat there, like literally staring at a waterfall, staring over the ocean in the middle of a forest. It's kind of making me emotional to say it, but having these moments of just like, oh my gosh, like, wow, this beautiful life, and where I am and everything I am and everything I'm doing, and I'm just alone. It's just me. It's just so, the stillness of it can sometimes be overwhelming, and it's a beautiful thing. And to be able to befriend yourself in those moments and be okay with the loneliness and recognize that there is that moment where you go, wow, I'm alone and I feel kind of lonely. And then in that emptiness, recognizing that you are observing your own emptiness and then realizing that by the very observation of that, you are actually not alone because you are with yourself. And it's really beautiful. Whew, emotional. It is a really beautiful awareness to have. And I think that you don't get to have those moments when you're always on the go. And now when I recognize loneliness, because sometimes I get homesick, right? I miss my family. I miss my close friends, the friends who know me, the friends who you just have a laugh with, and you can be doing special things or you can be doing silly things and they just get you, right? I miss that a lot, even though I'm doing this with the love of my life. Um, those moments of loneliness, they are invitations back to yourself. And I think it's important to have them. And I want to acknowledge I've had them here a million miles away from the people I love, and not including my partner because he's next door. And I've also had them in the hustle and bustle of London, surrounded by people I love, doing things I love, with a million and one things that I could be doing. And so it was just interesting for me to experience those moments in such contrasting environments. And I think it's important that we give ourselves the opportunity to experience that. And it's not just experiencing loneliness in paradise. I also want to offer, there have been really beautiful moments in paradise, and they're beautiful, like no one needs to tell you how good the highlight reel, everyone knows how good the highlight reel is, but the moments of being homesick and making sure that you make the effort to connect with the people you love and make the effort to stay in touch with them. Because I tell you what, this has been something that's been really hard for me to get my head around. I've got family and friendships that I know will last a lifetime. And it's true that you've got to make the effort to stay in touch with people, because out of sight, out of mind. And I know that friendship has been something that hasn't always come easy to me in my life. And especially before starting the life coaching journey, for me, healing my sisterhood wound and healing my relationship with women, healing my relationship with myself as a woman in this world has been a huge part of my growth journey. And recognizing that friendship, true friendship, like love, soul-centered friendship, it transcends time, it transcends space. And in the 3D, it is still important that you take the time and you make the effort to cultivate those relationships and say the things that need to be said, because unsaid, there is just too much room for assumption, too much room for forgetfulness, too much room to just move on. And I think it's one thing that I heard that really served me whenever I went into a coaching program, and I take this into my friendships as well, is that you bring the belonging. You bring the belonging into your coaching programs where you invest in yourself. But I think you also have to bring the belonging into your relationships. You choose to decide that your friendships matter and that they can transcend time and distance. And that was a big learning curve for me. And without getting too emotional, because I can feel the emotion rising within my body right now, but in the same breath, I have experienced grief in my time away from home. I lost a friend in the first 2 weeks of leaving England. One of my friends passed away, and she's my age, or she was my age, and that was just, it's heartbreaking. Of course it's heartbreaking, and it's the hardest thing to be away from the people you love during grief. And of course, like, it's it's interesting because one of my best friends, who has also just started traveling, she also experienced grief like in the first month of her being away. And we were speaking on the phone, and there's definitely a dynamic to dealing with grief when you're away from home. And grief is never easy. Grief is hard to speak about. And it's funny because there's so much to say when it comes to grief, right? And even me, like, I'm struggling to find the words to say it, but I will try. It's okay during the really emotional times to let it feel hard. I think that was a big thing, because I had moments when I found out about my friend's passing where like my initial instinct is to just get home. And I couldn't at the time, because I was in MIQ when I found out. And I actually don't know what the rule is. Like, it's interesting. I wanted to go home, but I never actually found out what I would have to do to get home. And I don't know if they would let you leave MIQ. I was literally bound to a hotel for 2 weeks. And I remember there were moments like going to sleep where I was just like, I feel so far away from home. And grief sucks, right? Of course it sucks. It's like the love that has nowhere to go. And you move through it. And again, like, you learn to hold yourself through the difficult time. And I remember asking for forgiveness for being so far away, and giving myself permission to feel all of the emotions of that. Giving myself permission to let it suck, to let it be hard, to let it be emotional, and to recognize that I don't have to feel guilty for living the life that lights me up. And that's a hard thing, especially grief aside, like even the homesick piece, like not being there with family, having your parents say, do you have to go so far away? It's hard. It's hard to be away from them. And it's hard to not want to people please the people you love the most. And you've got to live your own life. You've got to do it for you, because you only have one life, right? Like, you have to do it. Because I also know there were moments when I would be at home in England and I would have this craving inside me. I used to say when I was a kid, I remember saying it to my baby brothers, who aren't babies anymore, they're like grown ass men, but we used to say, this big old rock hurtling through space. And somehow I landed on this part of it, and I want to see the rest of it. I want to explore it. I just always had it as part of me. And I have to just give myself permission to live the life that I crave to live. And so this is why I stand so strongly when a client comes to me and they say, I want this for myself. I just know it's in me. I believe you. I believe you, and I make it my business, literally and figuratively. I make it my business to help you get there, to believe in your dreams sometimes before you do, to believe it's possible for you, to help you find a way to carve it out for yourself. And I believe in it in a way that is both so ethereal, so spiritual, so energetic, but I also believe in it in a way that's so practical. I remember seeing this post about 6 months before I actually left England. And I can't remember who it was. Oh my God, Mel Wells. That's who it was, Mel Wells. And she said in this post, people are always asking me how I traveled and how she did it. And she's like, guys, the way you do it is you just go online and book a ticket, and then you arrive at the airport and at the scheduled time, and you get on the airplane, chill out for a few hours, and then you end up on the other side in a new country. It's that simple. And I think this is something that we all complicate when it comes to business and traveling and selling and making money as a life coach. You just got to basically tell people what you're doing. You've got to communicate your offer. You've got to put yourself out there. If you want to travel, you just choose a destination, book a flight, arrive at the airport at the destined time, get on the airplane and arrive on the other side. It always stayed with me. There is a simplicity to it that I love. And it's definitely what I teach inside my one-to-one programs. I'm always like, guys, it's really simple. We need an offer, we need a price, we need a place to tell people about it. And then we just have to tell people about it over and over and over again. It gets to be that simple. So, okay, that was the emotional stuff. I want to talk about now the safety, the comfort, and the grounding. So this was interesting. And I think this is something that varies from people, like person to person, and something to think about for yourself. There is nothing wrong with having zero desire to ever travel or be a digital nomad. I just want to say that. I'm honestly sharing this so candidly because I'm purposefully not glorifying it. I purposefully wanted to talk about the really real, emotional, hard stuff because this is life. Life is 50-50, right? Life is 50% glorious and incredible. And life is 50% painful and sad and emotional and grief and sorrow and heartache. And I think you can still experience the 50% that is hard and still have so much self-love, self-gratitude, respect, sovereignty, reverence for those experiences. Because without that, I think you don't fully appreciate the good that comes through. And one aspect, which isn't good or bad, really, not that any emotion is good or bad. So I think it's a really binary way of looking at it. But one aspect of it is finding safety within. And if you are one of the people that have a craving to travel, who have a craving to see the world, regardless if that looks like digital nomading or if that just looks like having a couple of holidays a year, there is something to be said about finding safety and knowing how to ground within. Here's what I mean by that. I think having a home is so representative of being rooted like a tree. Like a tree doesn't move, right? A tree just roots in and doesn't move. It sways with the wind. It moves with the seasons, adapts with the seasons, but the tree is static. An interesting part of being a Homo sapien is that we're very mobile. We have the means to travel, and so we do. I saw this quote, I'm totally going to butcher it, but it was a quote about the hard thing with being a traveler at heart is that you never truly feel at home, because when you are home, you want to travel. And when you are traveling, you feel at home in traveling, but you're never truly at home. Like your heart is always split in two. And I really resonate with that. I also really butchered the quote. If I can find it, I'll put it in the show note. If you know it, put it in the comments. But I really resonate with that. And what I found is that as long as I was always taking time to be still and grounded and rooted within myself, my home is where my heart is. And my heart is generally very mercurial. It's when I'm with my love, when I'm with my family and the people I love, or it's in nature. And once in a blue moon, it's my bed. I'm not the kind of person that could live in bed. And I know I'm a projector, so I'm probably supposed to say the opposite. But every now and then, if I just have a good lie in and I can just really be with myself horizontally, that's perfect. But if I'm also horizontal on a towel at the beach, that's also perfect. I really do find home within myself. And it's a feeling. For me, it's a feeling of being grounded. And that I can create anywhere. That is something that I have found to be true for me. But I also respect and recognize that for other people, that grounded feeling happens in very specific places. And you've got to know that for yourself. And it might be something that you don't experience until you travel and you get to discover that for yourself. But if you've ever moved city or moved country or lived somewhere new, you might recognize this feeling. And I invite you to really tune into that and recognize for yourself, what does it actually feel like to feel like home? Home isn't a place, home is a feeling. And it's a place. But I want you to learn within yourself how it is actually a feeling within. I think it would be such a beautiful thing for you to recognize, because when you can always cultivate it, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can always find it. So I'm going to talk about prioritizing health. This was an interesting one. Now, obviously, as you can tell, I travel, and there's different types of digital nomading. There is the digital nomading where you're literally living out of a backpack and you're in countries where they don't speak your language and the culture is incredibly different. Now, as you know, I am obviously English speaking, being English, and in New Zealand and in Australia, They both speak English too. So my digital nomad experience might have been slightly different if I was traveling in Europe or South America or Indonesia or Asia. Indonesia is within Asia. And I recognize that that is a slightly different digital nomad experience to maybe what you've had or what you're thinking about exploring. That being said, certain things have been a challenge. Like when you are a digital nomad, you are more likely to eat out. Eating out isn't necessarily always conducive to good health because of the options available to you. The other thing I also found that was really challenging is exercise. That was something that I decided ahead of time, intentionally and on purpose, to make a priority. It's the kind of thing that I know people like swing one way or the other when it comes to like exercising on holiday. Some people take holiday as an opportunity to really like commit to exercise. Other people take holidays as an opportunity to completely throw any exercise out the window and not have to commit to it. Now, for me, exercise has always been a really important part of my mental and emotional well-being. So when I started traveling, I made a point of deciding intentionally and on purpose that I was going to prioritize it for my health. And so I did the research. And so when I joined the gym, I made a commitment to myself that no matter where we were traveling, what we were doing, I would exercise 3 times a week. And I have done. And maybe it's the Australian effect and living in a place that's sunny, but I have never been healthier. I have never been stronger. I have never been more proud of my body. And that, I have to say, definitely feels like a huge personal achievement because I didn't necessarily have high expectations that my fitness in particular would skyrocket. I'm very blessed to have a healthy body that allows me to exercise whenever I want to. And so, given that I have the privilege of a healthy body, able body, I take advantage of that and I commit to my health. And I make a point of doing so to the extent that it's just a part of my identity. And I also am a huge believer that my success in business is heavily influenced by my ability to maintain a healthy, high performance body that supports me, because a physical body that supports me also supports my mental and emotional well-being. Now, I also recognize that I work with clients and I have friends and family who are not blessed to have able bodies, in the sense that maybe they have chronic illness or disability that has inherent restrictions to how much they can exercise and how much you can prioritize your physical health. And I want to offer that if that's true for you, that you definitely want to experiment and get curious about what physical health looks like within the realms of your ability, and then to really allow that to become part of your identity. So if for you, all you can do is gentle movement, is yoga, is stretching, it's just being on the yoga mat and being aware of your body and having a connection with your body, that I think still qualifies as physical health and physical well-being. And connecting to that intentionally and on purpose will support you to feel more confident in your emotional and spiritual endeavors, especially as you're growing your coaching business. For me, it's one of the pillars of my success. And so I definitely wanted to speak about that as part of my digital nomad journey, because it was something that is, I have to admit, there have been plenty of weeks where I have not committed to what I said I would, and I notice it. If after 2 weeks I haven't worked out, I can tell. I see it in my sluggishness. I see it in my like get up and go energy that I have in the morning. I see it in my motivation. I see it in my drive. I see it in my inspiration. So if this is something that you value, and especially if you are a life coach, and of course you're listening to this podcast, especially as a life coach in the world who cares about being an example of what's possible for their clients, I think when you can get up and look after your body in whatever way that looks like for you, it makes you feel more integrity as a life coach for your clients. It has a ripple effect. And it's something that I never let be an excuse. And I always was onto myself whenever I noticed my physical commitment to my health slipping. I always made an effort to come back to it. And like I say, I didn't really have a choice because it's so ingrained in my identity. My body would give me feedback that, hey, Pamella, it's been a while, get your ass in gear, commit to what you said you would, because it serves you. And it does. So definitely something like, if I have no excuse, you have no excuse. Okay. So commit to it. Final piece, business. How the hell did I grow my business while I was a digital nomad? I often ask myself that. And I'm going to offer to you how exactly I did that. For me, being a digital nomad and building my business, they are synonymous. I'm able to be a digital nomad because I have a business. Even working from home in corporate has its restrictions. And even if corporate or even if your 9 to 5 allows you to work from home, they're probably not talking about being on a laptop at the beach. Let's be honest, right? And especially with the great return, you just have to go on LinkedIn for 5 minutes and you can see everybody's talking about, oh, nobody's interested in working from home anymore. Companies are bringing people back into the workplace. So that was a short-lived idea. So even though I worked from home and during the pandemic, I did have a holiday in Menorca that I didn't tell my company about because I still did my day job. That was a really interesting experience. And when I did that, that for me was the first trial of being a digital nomad. And when I realized that I was able to have an entire holiday in Menorca without my company even realizing, because to be fair, I was pretty much on the same time zone, give or take an hour, that was when I really realized, wait a minute, I can do this full time. Now, I didn't work for anyone. I went full time in my business before I became a digital nomad, but it gave me the confidence that it was possible. And so in my business, one of the things that I just decided was that the time zones were never going to be a problem. And I made it work. I have clients globally. I have clients in America, Europe, Asia, and Australia, New Zealand, literally global. I never make it a problem. And it means, yes, my business isn't 9 to 5. I work in the morning. Some of the coaching containers where I'm a client, I wake up at 5 a.m. for just so I can get coached. But I make a choice. I don't have to invest in those places, but those are where the coaches are that I want to invest in. I'm just going to have to show the fuck up and be okay with being tired on a Wednesday. That's okay. And for my European clients who I meet in my evening, their morning, I've also had to be okay with working evenings. But it also means that some days I'm free from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. and that's beautiful. So my lifestyle is very fluid. My working hours are not rigid. Every day looks a little bit different. Now, I do acknowledge I don't have dependents. I don't have kids. I do have freedom and flexibility to do that. I'm not going to be doing it like this forever. But I made a decision whilst I was free of dependence, whilst I don't have kids, especially whilst I was traveling. If I was really going to live this life of freedom, I had to recognize that freedom for me meant flexibility for my clients and meant thinking outside the norms of 9 to 5 and recognizing that I could serve clients any time of day. In doing that, I also recognized that it was important for me to prioritize my mental health and well-being. I've spoke a little bit about how I use exercise to do that, but yes, as a projector and just as a woman with a cycle and as just a human who needs to sleep, I prioritize getting the amount of sleep I need, waking up other than that 5 a.m. start with the coach that I choose to invest in America. I make sure that I get 7, 8 hours sleep a night. I rest periodically. I also meditate twice a day. Not many of you maybe know that about me, but I do. I meditate twice a day, 20 minutes every day, using a method called transcendental meditation. And I swear to God, it gives me more time and it gives me more emotional capacity to serve my clients better. So I prioritize rest. I prioritize my sleep. I prioritize my meditation. I prioritize my exercise. When I make my business work around the things that I prioritize, I find that I have more emotional and physical capacity to serve and give more and do more in a way that serves my clients better. By serving me and filling my own cup, I am able to give from overflow instead of giving from depletion. This is a huge part of what I teach inside my one-to-one as well, because lots of the clients that I work with obviously are coming from corporate, where we have basically learned to burn ourselves out, burn the candle at both ends, give more than we have, give from an empty cup over and over again, and we burn out. And that's why most of my clients wanted to leave corporate in the first place. So I am a product of my product. I walk the walk. I prioritize all of these things because it helps me be a better coach. It means that I enjoy my life more. It means that I've actually been able to enjoy this digital nomad journey and go and have days out when I want to, go to the beach when I want to, go see a waterfall when I want to, go work from a coffee shop when I want to, or work by the beach when I want to. And I still have ample time to serve, to create, to learn, to develop myself. It really gets to work for you because you choose to make it work, because you prioritize your you time before anything else. It is a complete 180 on what we are taught when we work for someone else. It's basically a complete 180 on what society has taught us to be, but it has been an essential part of my health, my success, and my well-being and my quality of life. If you're thinking, what the hell? Like, I love the idea of that, but I have no idea how to do that, then come work with me. This is exactly what I teach inside my one-to-one. And it's not really a training that I can give you. It's like a way of being. It's part of the coaching experience, because if you're not already doing it, it's not like learn how to do this once and then go implement. This is like deep deconditioning, deep healing, deep unlayering and rediscovering and reinventing yourself into the version of you, into the life that you actually want to create. And it isn't easy. There have been times where I do find myself overworking on occasion. There are still times where I find myself working late into the night. But when I do catch myself doing that, I make sure that I take the time the next day to make time for myself. I also enforce rest. I talk about this extensively inside my coaching, and I ensure that my clients are enforcing rest in their coaching business, where they are purposefully and intentionally not creating, not coaching, not learning, not being a client to coaching, that they are intentionally out there living their life. And here's the thing with resting, it doesn't always feel good. Like, that's something that many people don't consider. It doesn't always feel good. That's when you know you're resting properly. So yeah, the lifestyle piece is huge. The other thing is systems. I didn't mess around when it came to systems in my business. I invested and I made sure that I took the time to automate my client onboarding, to automate things like consults, to make sure that my calendar is up to date, that it's refreshed. I also have very strong boundaries in my business. My clients know when I'm available. They know when I'm not available. They know when to expect me inside Voxer. They know the rules about rescheduling sessions if they ever need to. It's never a problem. They know how to go about that. And I put systems in place to make it simple, to make it automated, so that all of my clients are well served, that they get everything that they came for. I also teach my clients how to get the most out of their program when they join me for one-to-one. And like I said, I enforce my boundaries from a place of love, from a place of self-care, from a place of sufficiency, not as a barrier, but as a way to open up so that when I am available for my clients, I can give myself abundantly and fully with plenty of time. It is such a vibe. And I think it's why my clients always feel so supported, why they feel so confident to enforce boundaries when it comes to their clients, and it helps them show up as the CEO in their business. Again, this isn't me just talking the talk. This is me walking the walk by being an example of what's possible. And the great thing about having really good systems in place, having really clear onboarding processes in place that you love, that are client-centered, and having really strong boundaries in your business, it means that my clients can also be set up for success in their business because they're seeing what looks good and what works. And it sets me up to scale. And that's really important because I'm not going to be able to offer one-to-one at the volume that I do right now. I'm not going to be able to offer one-to-one at the prices that I do right now. I'm nearly at fully booked. At the time of this recording, my pricing is about to increase in just over 6 days because I am nearly fully booked. My ability to take on more clients is becoming narrower and narrower because I give so much, which means when I reach fully booked, which will be in a couple of months, I'm going to have to move into more group coaching so that I can serve more people and continue to do this beautiful work that I love to do. So I have set myself up intentionally and on purpose to allow myself to scale. So something that you want to reflect on if you're not doing already at the volume and at the capacity that really serves you and your clients, it's to look at your systems, look at your onboarding, look at your processes, look at your boundaries. As you can see, all of these things are entwined and entangled together. When we work together one-to-one, I help you enforce those things. You see it through osmosis and through experiencing me as your coach, but I'll also teach you how to implement it in your business as well in a way that works for you, whether you're a digital nomad or not. So it's definitely something to think about if you know that this is something that you need in your business to take it to the next level. And to be honest, I was doing this from the very beginning, even before I was a digital nomad. I've always just had really good boundaries. And I think that's because I had a busy 9 to 5, as you know. I had a busy corporate life and I just value my private time. So for me, boundaries have always been a good thing. I've always been really good at not people pleasing. And I had to learn that from my first burnout episode in corporate. This is how the abundance marketing method came about, to be honest with you. I knew that if I was going to show up as powerfully and as potently and at the volume that I really wanted to in my business, because I get this a lot. My clients often say to me, how do you do so much? How do you sell most days on Instagram? How are you in my emails so frequently? How are you doing a podcast alongside a nearly fully booked coaching business? And you have group programs. Like, how do you do it all when you're traveling? I say, honestly, it is because of everything I've just told you: systems, onboarding, processes, boundaries, and filling my own cup first. This is exactly how the abundance marketing method is born. The other thing that I did in my business that I chose intentionally and on purpose when I became a digital nomad was that I was never going to let travel and nomading being a reason not to sell. Just like I didn't let it be a reason not to exercise. Just like I let it never be a reason not to stay connected with the people I love and my friendships. As you can see, this is just part of my identity. It's part of my being. If this is what I want to create for my life, then this is a non-negotiable. And selling is a big part of that. Selling is a growth journey. Getting comfortable with selling, getting comfortable with believing in your services as a coach, recognizing the value that you bring, getting comfortable and confident and articulate, talking about your offers, your pricing, the transformation you create for your clients. I wasn't always this fluid when I started. Selling wasn't this easy for me, but I did always believe in myself. And I always let my level of belief be good enough to get me out there and to create clients. I was selling from the outset. As I said, I got my first paid client the same month that I certified. I didn't let experience be an excuse not to get out there, not to be creating clients. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let my digital nomad chapter be an excuse not to grow my business. It was the reason why I was able to travel. So I was always going to let the two happen side by side. It was just inevitable. It just the way it was for me. It was never an option for it to be anything less. Where are you letting your circumstances be an excuse instead of making them the reason why and letting them spur you on? I think any excuse that you have that you don't have the success or the clients or the money you want, you've got to just 180 it and turn it into the reason why you are going to be a success. Let that fuel you. So I prioritize selling no matter what during my journey, and it serves me to this day. And lastly, but probably most importantly, I let myself have luscious amounts of support. One thing that I have prioritized throughout my digital nomad journey was not just putting all of that pressure on myself to figure it out alone. And I wasn't going to put it on my partner. Yes, we lean on each other immensely for emotional support and physical support, and we love each other and we have a beautiful connection. I've said that many times. And I didn't expect him to be my everything, because he's not. He's my lover, he's my partner, he's my best friend, but he is not my business coach. I lean on my coaches immensely. I invested in myself abundantly whilst I was traveling. And again, I never let my digital nomad experience be an excuse not to invest in my business. I always made sure that I had the money to invest in my business. I made sure that I was well resourced to invest in my business. I made sure that I was financially abundant outside of my business so that I could reinvest the money I made from my business back into my business again and again and again and again. And that meant that I always had business coaches. I always have access to emotional support when I need it, so that I know that when I really need deep subconscious work, I have a coach to go to. When I need strategic support in my business, I have a coach to go to. I would tell myself that the resources I had available to me right now were more than enough. I go in with the mindset that I have everything I need, that I am well supported, whether or not I can invest or not. And then I made my investment of my time, my attention, my energy as meaningful as investing my money. And that's how I always got ROI on my investment. That was a game changer for me. And that is how I have continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. So that's everything I wanted to cover. So thank you so much for joining me on this beautiful episode where I have been sharing all the things about my digital nomad journey. As I've shared it, I've realized there is so many more things that I could have talked about. But let me know, drop me a DM if this has been helpful. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was. I love to have you here, love to connect. And if you want to talk about coaching together, you know what to do. Go book a consult. Let's connect. We'll talk about your journey. We'll talk about what you want. Maybe you want to be a digital nomad and I can help you with that. But either way, come to me when you're ready to grow your coaching business. I will help you. All right. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.